Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our webinar series, Drapers Connects. My name is Graham Moran, and I am the Associate Editor of Drapers. Thank you all for joining us. In partnership with NuOrder by Lightspeed, today we will be discussing the wholesale forecast for 2024, covering the risks and rewards of wholesale with Acne Studios and Charles Tyrwhitt. So thank you very much to our panel for joining us. Could you please take a moment to introduce yourself and let us know what it is that you do? Tom, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Graham. So I'm Tom Groves. I'm the Director of Account Management here at NuOrder by Lightspeed. I've been working with NuOrder now for over 5 years, and I'm based in London. So, I work closely with the other guys on the panel today. So it's good to be here. Thank you.
Sean?
So I'm Sean Holler. I'm the International Commercial Manager at Charles Tyrwhitt. Charles Tyrwhitt, you may know, is a menswear brand from London, UK. We're sort of known for online and retail, but we've been growing our B2B business over the sort of past 3 years. And I'm looking after all the commercial elements of that, including wholesale.
Thank you very much. Ina?
Yeah, my name is Einar Svensson. I work for Acne Studios as a commercial project manager. Started here about 9 years ago, 9 years and a bit. Always been working with the wholesale department in various roles, but now I'm part of the commercial department, looking at initiatives for the entire commercial department. So all sales channels really, but wholesale is always like in my heart and my focus at least.
Excellent. We've got a really nice and varied panel, I think, here. So we've got a lot of different viewpoints from different sides of the industry. So let's get started. Before we do, if you are watching live, please feel free to interact with our panel. You can send questions via the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go. So I think it's fair to say that the last few years have seen a few shifts within the wholesale market, particularly impacted by COVID, the dominance of digital, the kind of death and resurgence of stores, you could say, and of course, the rise of the D2C or direct-to-consumer model. To set some context for today's discussion, I thought I'd ask, where are we today? Is wholesale on the rise again, or are brands and retailers phasing it out? And what trends do you think will impact the market through 2024 in particular? So Tom, you obviously work with hundreds of brands and retailers. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I mean, look, of course, I agree that the wholesale market and the retail landscape in general has been pretty volatile over the last 5 years or so. I've certainly not seen the market shift so frequently between, let's focus on D2C. Oh, no, let's focus on B2B. And, we talk to a number of brands day in, day out, and they tell us different things like, we're really going to focus on B2B now. And then we see others that are like, we're going to try the B2C model for a bit. And honestly, we're seeing a lot of shift between the two. And, everyone knows what happened on the high street during COVID, that dreaded word. And whilst we still talk about that often, probably too often, it's important to keep focus, looking forward to ensure brands are best placed to take advantage of the current market dynamics that we're seeing, play out through 2024. When we look at the data, at least in the UK, the MRI data shows us that footfall rose just over 3% in 2023. So, still down on pre-pandemic levels, but tracking in a positive direction, which is, really good to hear, especially when you take into account, some of the headwinds that we're seeing, especially in London and the UK, where we have, transport strikes every other day, high inflation, soaring cost of living, a new budget that was out less than an hour ago. So all these things affect, consumer confidence and where brands, want to be. And I think, this highlights why an omnichannel approach is so critical going forward to take advantage of both D2C and B2B routes to market. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of it as we go through this webinar. And I think, it's clear that, brands are shifting their focus back to wholesale in 2024, especially from talking to a number of brands in the first 3 months of this year. And, we see brands want to find new ways to reach new customers globally, but they've still got to manage that overall budget and ensure, sustainable profitability, which is what's important for NuOrder by Lightspeed as well. And some of you that have been reading the news over the last week, at least in the fashion arena, will have seen a recent example of Gymshark, right, where they just announced their first wholesale offering in Selfridges. So they've gone a step further and said we're going to announce the launch of our new range that's exclusively through Selfridges to begin with, and that's kind of a good example of a brand building and trying to shift their brand to a wider audience, I think. So I mean, they're my kind of opening points. I don't know if you agree with some of these or want to elaborate?
No, I agree with you. And I think if you look back maybe 2 or 3 years and pre-pandemic, you could see that a lot of retailers, and you could see like a shift into like a marketplace models, and you shifted like direct to consumer behavior. And some of the big brands, like luxury brands that we sometimes look at, really took back a lot of wholesale distribution to try to own their own clients in all channels. And I think we're really seeing a shift away from that now after pandemic. So I would say that wholesale is definitely on the rise, like compared to what it has been, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. Sean, I know you have lots of thoughts on this too. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, wholesale absolutely is not dead. And, CT, we've come to the party late on this sort of business to business element of retail. We've been very much a direct consumer led business for 75, 80% of our history. So we're still seeing the opportunities out there and still realizing them. I mean, one thing we have noticed is some of the larger department store chains are sort of focusing on that D2C marketplace model over the wholesale buying. But that doesn't mean to say that they're not willing to test it and try a few things. Where we are seeing lots of interest, and not just in the UK, but globally, is through the smaller independents and multi-brand stores, which offer slightly more curated ranges, and they're really going for it. So it's still around. We're seeing it perhaps on a smaller purchaser in terms of rather than larger department stores. But it's interesting what we're saying about Gymshark and Selfridges. But it's absolutely all to play for. We are talking with Macy's as a department. I mean, you can't get much bigger as a department store with a wholesale deal. So it absolutely still plays a key part in where we're going and what we see going forward.
Totally, I think.
Sorry, Graham. Sure, and just on that point as well, with your growth in wholesale, obviously you've seen some great growth over the last year or two. Are you really focusing on the more independent retailer going forward in international markets, or is it more these big box department stores?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen huge growth. I think the last numbers we looked at over the past 3 years, our wholesale business has grown 20-fold over 3 years, which is rapid growth for us. But we're looking at various opportunities in various international markets. We want to grow our brand awareness and our brand presence internationally in the markets we're not already in. We're big in the UK. We've got a big business in the US, but we're not big in the US. And we've got a sizable business in Germany and Australia. It's all of the other markets we want to enter. And we're finding what are the best ways to do that. And wholesale is one of the best ways to do it. It allows us to try the products, try partners. And in some territories, the independents are the way to do it because we want to test what that market looks like on a grander scale. But then in other markets, it's better to go with the sort of big box chains, i.e. Macy's in the US. But, I think of we've got a smaller independent partner, perhaps in Czech Republic, smaller independent partner, perhaps in China, where we're testing those markets before we go into them in a bit more heavy-handed way.
And I think, that has been our approach since the beginning of Acne Studios. We started with wholesale basically, and I think for you, like coming from the other direction, starting like with your online and like a catalog way of working, reaching new markets is essentially wholesale is the most important way to do it, because it's hard to do research and like do an analysis of a new region or a country or territory. But if you find the local like key players, they already know their customer, they know their clients, and if they believe in your brand, then they know that the end consumer might do so as well. So it's definitely the way to go. And that's still what we are doing when we want to approach new markets. So that's definitely something positive.
And what we find as a benefit for ourselves, I mean, we've got such a diverse product offering. You know, we're very much known for our formal wear, but we've really sort of stepped up our casual wear lifestyle offering in the sort of, you know, easier to wear day-to-day product. And because of that wide offering, we're able to go to those independents, and they're able to curate their own range. So perhaps they don't have a gap in their formal area of their store, but they do in the lifestyle. So they take a bit of that, perhaps the other way around in other locations. So it really helps us to be quite agile and curated in where we want to be and sort of make sure we get our presence there.
And Sean, I guess on that point, you know, if they've taken some of your other range, but they don't have a gap for the formal wear, you know, going forward over the next 2, 3, 4 seasons, then potentially they can start to, you know, bring in that formal wear on a case-by-case basis and try and grow that side of the business as well. So even though you start on a small scale, you know, wholesale with certain retailers, you can then grow and grow and grow with them over the next few seasons.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, I've got countless partners that I could reel off, whereby we've started on just shirts and gone into the casual, and just casual and gone into the formal and tailoring.
Excellent. Feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to cram a lot into the next 45 minutes. But no, I think completely agree with everything that you've all said. And I think, Tom, that is an excellent example. Gymshark really showing the strength of wholesale and how it's going to be around for a while. You know, this big online-only D2C brand that said, oh, we'll never do wholesale, we'll never open a store. They now have a massive store on Regent Street and are in the biggest department store at the other end of the street. So yeah, I think you're right. Wholesale is here to stay. However, we have called this webinar the risks and rewards, the wholesale forecast. So I thought before we get into more detail on that international advantage of wholesale, let's talk about those risks and rewards. Why don't we start with the negative? What are the biggest challenges for the year ahead and beyond? Sean, you did already touch on some, but what do you think? What are you looking out for as a challenge or a risk this year?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges we are seeing, I think I touched on it, is the move on some department stores to move to that marketplace D2C integration led. You know, they want to reduce their risk. Why should, you know, their argument is, why should we put all of our cash into your stock, whether it works or doesn't work? So, you know, that there is a risk there that we're not seeing that growth through some of those department stores. And, you know, then you've got other macroeconomic issues. You know, I think we're going to talk about international later, but we do have footholds in international markets, and we are exposed to those macroeconomic conditions. You know, Tom touched on what's going on in the UK. They are risks. They do soften, they do dampen confidence. And, you know, we believe you want to launch a brand, because we are launching with these partners, in a confident and a credible way, which probably requires a good option width, a good depth, to make sure that those products are looking credible in store. And there's risk there if people are feeling nervous about what's going on in the world.
What about Acne? What risk do you think?
I think, I mean, looking at the past years where we had some, like, kind of, even though like after the COVID was tough in some ways, it was also very like, some of the big online retailers were really seeing great increase in like in traffic and sales, and we're chasing a lot of like just increase in turnover. But now, as we're like almost in a recession and it's a lot of tougher times, we see many of those are talking about profitability in a way they haven't really done before, where it's gone from like chasing just becoming as big as possible, and now maybe profitability is a lot more important. So I think sell-through is a key thing to pay attention to and something to really focus on. So if your product doesn't sell through, it might be easier for, it might be that some of the smaller brands or brands that aren't performing are being cut out. So that's one of the challenges we're seeing, and we're really trying to focus on the right partners, I would say, as it's a lot tougher now.
Great. Tom, I saw you nodding as soon as sell-through came up. What are you seeing? We'll come to that, but what are you seeing as the challenges? What are a lot of people kind of relaying to you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just for the back of what I just said, obviously, you know, having overstock or understock, they're both risks. You know, you're missing key sales, or you're going to end up with discounting in the market, which, you know, brands don't want. So it really is key to have a close relationship, with your wholesale partner, your retailer, to understand, what is the right level of stock we should be holding in different areas of the market, in different stores in different countries, that kind of thing. So take advantage of, the consumer demand. I'm really just backing what you guys said, really. It's no surprise that with the multiple aspects of life, when you put all your eggs in one basket, it inherently creates more risk with that channel. So, as I mentioned before, an omnichannel strategy that does include, D2C, obviously B2B, even e-commerce and marketplace models as well. It just helps isolate or helps mitigate the isolated channel risk as part of that. So, just like with investing, you'd invest in ETF rather than individual stock because it's, less risk and it's more diverse in terms of the business. Obviously, every brand and individual has a different tolerance, to the said risk. And the key challenges that I foresee from talking to brands this year are, some element of kind of market saturation. A lot of brands are playing in the same space. Obviously, Sean mentioned before, where potentially you can't get, your formal wear range into a store, but you can start with other ranges, and that's a key focus. And I think it's a good idea on what to go forward with. Other things, supply chain. Obviously, we've seen quite a lot of supply chain issues, especially within the wholesale market with what's happened, in Ukraine, after COVID as well, geopolitical tensions. So these disruptions can lead to, delays in production, affecting a brand's ability to meet wholesale demand. And that's why having those relationships with the retailer is so critical to make sure we get through those kind of like bumpy times.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you say about diversification of risk. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we put the gas on the B2B, because we were looking at it sort of around the COVID time, and we saw our sales online tank. Obviously, our stores were shut, and actually B2B opened up an avenue of revenue that was quite attractive to us. So it diversifies us as a retailer and overall in terms of sort of that omni-channel sort of offering. But then also within the channel itself, we try to balance off accounts. We've got some accounts that are quite high risk, but quite high reward. And we've got some steady as she goes sort of accounts where are very steady every month, consistent income and no risk whatsoever. So, we try to balance the accounts as a profile, as a channel as well.
Really is like the investment example that you used, Tom, taking high risk and low risk. We talked about.
Sorry, Graham, just on that point as well. Obviously, this is where data is so important, right? In the market. So understanding, sell through, understanding stock. Obviously, NuOrder being a B2B tool, we're looking at different ways in which we can enhance our brand's ability to get that data from our partners and from their partners. And then basically we're going to use things like AI to generate recommendations so brands can understand, where certain styles are selling well in the market, or where certain styles are not selling well in the market. So then that can help them, shift focus for replenishment and also, give them idea for future trends going forward as well. So with things we're looking at as well to help support our brands.
Looking forward to that, Tom.
Yeah.
Coming soon, Einar, coming soon.
Good.
Well, as you that is a positive, looking ahead to help brands and retailers. I thought we started with the challenges and the risks. Why don't we talk about the bright spots and the things that we're looking forward to, or the opportunities we're going to try and make the most of? Could you share some that you are focusing on at Acne?
No, I think a wider distribution is where we will see the most growth. I think in the past years we have grown a lot with like some big accounts. We've grown with others as well. But when you become too dependent on those, and now that it's a bit more shaky when it comes to like macroeconomics and also, profitability challenges. So what we've seen in the last fixed sales that we did is that we see a lot of like our total growth comes from a wider distribution and picking up new clients, or partners. So we're going back to the roots of wholesale, really, to widen the distribution, because I think the demand for it is still there.
Go on.
Yeah, we are seeing bright spots, like I said, in the independent department stores. We showed for the second time at Pitti just this past January, and we got loads of interest from independents across Europe. And actually, Far East and various other locations. And we're seeing that as a huge way of growing our presence and our profile and our awareness as a brand in new sort of exciting territories for us, which we can then build on. And then, you know, again, going back to our range, we can get ourselves and engineer ourselves into these locations and take them as places to grow. And, you know, we have great flexibility in our model that we can offer. We can offer good margins. We can offer good routes and supply chain efficiencies to help us get into there. And, you know, what we're seeing is that customers want a more curated proposition nowadays. And so if we can help curate with our partners what's on offer in the store, that's driving customers back into their location. So it's good for them. It's good for the customer because they're getting the curated proposition they want. And because it's successful, it's good for us, driving repeat business and growth. So, you know, it all feels like there's a nice rosy road ahead of us if we keep focusing on where we're going.
Any positivity to add?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I agree, Sean, especially as, you know, you're kind of new to wholesale, right, compared to Acne. You know, wholesale definitely helps to raise brand awareness, especially in, you know, other markets. Obviously, you're taking advantage of there's already established audiences that are part of that retail network, whether it's you know, a big box, you know, John Lewis, Selfridges kind of store, or whether it's the independents in certain, you know, smaller areas of the UK or Europe. So I think that's definitely a positive to wholesale, especially when you're starting out, even if you're an established brand or even if you're a new brand. You know, wholesale is just an easier way to get to market. You know, another key point I personally relate to is that I'm, you know, consumers like myself, I guess, are more brand agnostic. So I'm more interested in like finding the best products at a certain category, which is why I would target kind of multi-brand retailers. So I can look at a number of different brands in the same place based on the category that I'm looking to shop. So that obviously, you know, adds another element to doing wholesale versus, you know, going directly to the market.
John, we have already touched on it, but I want to delve a little deeper into international. Obviously, well, not obviously, but we have mentioned that wholesale can be a very effective business strategy for reaching a broader customer base, particularly overseas. That is definitely something that Acne Studios and Charles Tyrwhitt have taken advantage of. So why don't we talk a little bit more about that? Einar, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we are a Swedish brand, and I mean, we are in some ways, you know, we are competing on a luxury market now, and the luxury or like the luxury consumers, it's not that many in Sweden anymore. So we've always been looking outside of Sweden when it comes to distribution, and always been that's how it started. So we're pushing into new markets, and I think it's really important that you like if you want to grow outside of the region you're in, you really have to define what brand you are, and then be very consistent in what stores and other what partners you start working with. Because I mean, you have to define who you are and then go for that. Because otherwise, you might get lost in just like taking opportunities as they come, and you know, don't think long term. So I think that's the most important when it comes to like how to find that growth sustainable, is to really define where you want to be for years to come, I would say.
Yeah. Sean, as you've touched on, I see Charles Tyrwhitt as, you know, becoming super established in the UK. I think you said it launched 40 years ago, but only in the last few years has it A, stepped into wholesale, but B, done that via pushing internationally. Could you tell us a bit about that, you know, why you decided to do that, and kind of actually how you did that?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, we started in the UK, you know, with Charles Tyrwhitt, Jermyn Street. That is our home. Our home is Jermyn Street. It's the home of the shirt, and we are the home of the proper shirts. So that is where the heart is. But, you know, we developed a successful US business, and, you know, it's not, could actually be a smidge bigger than our UK business right now. But, you know, as a percentage of the market share in the US, it is tiny. And then, you know, we've developed the German and Australian businesses over those few years as well. because we're servicing that online customer in those various territories, we have a unique setup in that we've got one distribution center in the UK, a bonded warehouse, and that's servicing all of our global customers. And now we're trying to shoehorn in a B2B wholesale business, trying to ship internationally as well. We're not set ourselves up for that. We're just trying to work and adapt to make the business as efficient as it can be. But it does have its advantages. Because everything comes into a bonded warehouse, shipping internationally, we get a nice, a good duty benefit through that. Because if we're taking it from our UK pots and sending it off to partners around the world, it helps us. We've also got a rather flexible and solid supply chain from various places in the world, and they're very supportive and flexible in allowing us to ship directly from them as well. But we've seen wholesale as a great mechanism to try those new markets that we're not dominant in. The Middle East springs to mind. We've got a partner out there, and we've wholesaled into there, and we're in 18 points of sale across the Middle East through wholesale, and that has generated brand awareness, brand recognition, and developed a good business out there, which we're seeking to drive forward. But our view has always been you've got to take decisions for the long term, especially with international. There's a lot of things going on out there in the world, so all the decisions are taken with a very much long-term view, even if there's some short-term pain, because we're focused on the prize 5, 6, 10 years down the road.
Yeah, agree, Sean. And obviously, going directly to market in a different country is obviously higher risk, and going via wholesale is lower risk. But how would you, obviously with the example of the Middle East partner, how did you choose kind of which partner to go for? What were like the key things you were looking for in a partner in a new market?
Yeah, so we assess the market and who are the players out there, and what are the opportunities as well. Because some partners just don't have any opportunities right there. So you've got to find out who has the opportunity. And when we looked at the Middle East, we saw who were the players, what was available, and actually we saw quite a few franchise opportunities out there, but perhaps less wholesale opportunities. And we wanted to go wholesale first because the risk initially. And we were doing this in our first year of doing B2B as well, so we hadn't quite found the right gear to go down the franchise route at that point. And we partnered up with Al Shire, the Al Shire family, the Al Shire group out there, and we've been wholesaling and selling into 18 of the Debenhams stores across the region. And we've turned them almost into shop and shops. We've branded them, we've kitted it out with the fixtures, and we've made sure there's significant brand presence in those locations, because we wanted to do it with the authority of making sure the product looked as good as it could do. And that's driven significant halo effect to our own business. Our own business online has grown 80% year on year in the first year, and a further 70% the year after. So it really is ticking the boxes of entering the market through a low risk route, but then driving our own D2C sales, and actually that's driven more customers into their locations, and their wholesale buys are growing as well. So it really is sort of a nice ecosystem that it can deliver.
So you haven't seen kind of wholesale cannibalize your direct-to-consumer sales at all?
Absolutely not at this stage. We're a very young brand internationally, so we feel we've got a long road to go down. But we're always mindful of that cannibalization risk and that level. We're aware of it. We just don't think we're there just yet.
And Einar, do you come up with this name? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've seen similar, behavior and similar results for us when we enter markets. We haven't really had that as a strategy, but that's how we started. We were a denim brand from the beginning, and we pushed ourselves to become part of a denim floor somewhere in department stores. And then we entered ready-to-wear. We pushed in ready-to-wear, and then we ended up on a designer floor. And suddenly you have a really great turnover somewhere, and you want to shift that into retail. So, and as we've opened the retail stores in locations that we haven't had retail presence before, we've seen that the brand awareness has increased. So to say that wholesale cannibalize on retail, I would say that's rarely the case for us ever. It just creates even a better of a mixture, I would say, and reach. Because often also you have to remember that the wholesale partner serves a completely different clients in many cases than like end consumers are than you do in the retail stores. It's a very different person that shops on acnestudios.com versus someone who goes into a small boutique somewhere in Belgium. We love both customers equally, and they love the brand equally. but they are very shopping in different ways and have a different way of looking at the brand. But I think that's one of the key strengths, I would say, with wholesale, that you reach a different customer compared to who you would reach with your own channel.
Yeah. And I think internationally, you know, I touched on it earlier about that sort of diversifying the risk profile. You know, we were wholesaling into Nigeria, which could be perceived as a high risk country, but we're also wholesaling into the US and the Philippines, less risk. So, you know, we're very conscious of where we're doing it and when we do it, because we want to sort of offset where one country could be down, another country could be up. So we found that sort of balancing act as a sort of a really key driver of where we sort of go next. And the other thing that we do when we think about the international is it can then become the next step to franchise. You know, if I think of some of our territories, we've wholesaled initially, and then they've converted those locations into full-on Charles Tyrwhitt franchise locations. So it's a nice gateway or a stepping stone into that other type of business as well.
I think that feeds back to what Tom said at the beginning, that it's all about this kind of omni-channel approach. It's not one or the other. It's not black or white. And I think it's great to hear you guys say, and I think our audience have in the questions responded to that it's not, it doesn't cannibalize. It kind of all feeds into a positive message when done right. It's all part of a positive momentum for a brand, I guess. Which kind of brings me on to the next point. I know we've talked about the way the industry in some ways has changed and in some ways hasn't. What does success look like in wholesale today? You know, what is it being in a store that you've always wanted to be in, but maybe not making many sales? Or is it all about sales? I know we've touched on profitability, sustainable profitability. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah, so, you know, that the idea of these kind of prestige stores that everybody wants to be in, but maybe just being stocked there isn't as good as you thought it was, maybe. What does success look like today? Sean, why don't we start with you for a brand that's sort of in its early-ish days of wholesale?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we of course we've got those sort of bullseye locations that we are absolutely aiming for, but you know, we need to build a base. We need to prove our mustard. You know, are we a good brand that can do wholesale authoritatively with credibility and successfully and sustainably? So right now, you know, our focus is, you know, making sure the partners achieve that. You know, sell-through is a key thing. Are they achieving the sell-throughs they need? But, you know, we're wanting to see, even on those smaller scales, are we in the right locations, sort of territories, but also, you know, malls or locations in those territories? Who are our brand adjacencies that we're sitting next to in all these multi-brand environments? We don't want to be with the wrong brand and therefore portraying the wrong image. And, you know, that then leads into what is our brand presence in those locations? Are we looking credible as a brand when we're selling into those locations? Because you never know who's around the corner and viewing us in those areas that could be part of that bullseye location that we're targeting. So, you know, it's building all those together right now, which generates that sort of compound effect of that's a really successful account because we've done it with authority and credibility. Therefore, we've then got a case study to take to the next partner we want to work with and say, go look what we've done here. We can do that with you. And then the next one, we've done it with these and these, and then sort of building that together as we go through our journey to then be able to say, do you know what? We are an authority on how to do wholesale well and taking that forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I keep nodding when I hear this, and I mean, it's a right way to do it, I think, you know. And I think the same for us. The key points like going forward this year is I would say full price sell through. I would say, I mean, it's almost like we're going back to somewhere like pre-online shopping in a way. You have to make sure that you're in the right space, that you have a great positioning and a great like representation with good brand adjacencies, so that the end consumer understands who you are and understands the brand in a correct environment. And then, of course, that you sell through, because that's where the profitability comes in place. And I mean, you want ideally you have the product sell out every season, and the clients come back and have a demand for it. So I'd say that's the absolutely most important thing. And I mean, now also you don't want to sit on stock for sustainability reasons. I mean, overstock is, you know, a big issue for so many brands out there. So, I mean, that goes hand in hand. So selling out means a sustainable way of making products that, you know, that the consumers buy and that they love and wear.
Tom,
Yeah,
anything to add?
yeah, no, I agree. I don't know, and yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one because I think obviously we work with you know, a lot of brands and different sizes. Obviously, we're lucky on this webinar today. You know, got two very well established brands, but we work with some very new wholesale brands and new brands in the market completely. And I think the biggest mistake that new brands often make is to think that everything's going well with their business. And sometimes they ignore the telltale signs that there might be a problem with their wholesale network and things like that. So I think overall success in wholesale has changed over the past few years, I'd say. But I think it's still underlined by the key fact that, you know, the wholesale channel needs to deliver value for every party, right? So like the brand, the retailer, and the end consumer. You're not just looking after yourself and the consumer. You have to take note of there's another party in this relationship. So how can it be like a win-win-win for the brand, the retailer, and the consumer? Obviously, I know you mentioned about stock, right? A well-managed inventory is going to be key because you have to keep, you know, your eyes on the merchandise in real time and obviously partner with that retailer to understand, you know, the trends, historical data, sell-through, as we said. And that's why we mentioned, you know, what we're working on before. And, you know, this is where, you know, a B2B tool that can collect and analyze the stock and the sell-through can really support brands and retailers in using kind of that data-driven insights to make informed decisions and therefore take full advantage of consumer demand, no matter where we're looking in the market. So I think that's definitely a key success factor. And obviously sustainability, as we mentioned as well, is also key. So successful brands, you know, in wholesale often incorporate sustainable practices into their operations, you know, reducing carbon footprint, minimizing waste. And I think they're becoming a lot more common success factors for wholesale rather than just the financial numbers now.
Thank you, Tom. You made a really nice statement there about how, you know, there's another party in the relationship. Has to deliver value for everyone, which was kind of going to be my next question. Obviously, wholesale is a partnership between a brand and a retailer. At a very basic level, that's what it is. But there can be an interesting power dynamic there. I think sometimes, and I know definitely at Drapers, we've reported on retailers, pulling in and pulling out of wholesale and, you know, taking on lots or dropping lots of clients, that kind of thing. Where do we think we're at today? You know, what is the dynamic between brand and retailer? And do you have any advice on a successful partnership? And something additional that we've had from the audience, actually, just to put you all on the spot. Someone has mentioned particularly that around discounting. And I think that can be a challenge when it comes to a relationship between brand and retailer. So yes, where are we now in that dynamic? How do you have a positive dynamic, and what challenges are there particularly around this? I know why you would start with you.
No, I think the most important to have like a very long-term relationship. So I think when it comes to the partners that we have, many of them we've had for years. And when you establish a really long-term relationship through like several levels also within the company and the retailer, you like from supply chain to finance to operations through all the levels, and you have a good communication, you can go through like good and bad times, you know, because we are dependent on producing a good collection and the best product every season. And also we are dependent on that our wholesalers sell out and make a good profit of our products every year. So, I mean, that can vary from time to time. So I would say there's never like what do you say, like a power. There's always like a power shift and there's always like a mutual work that you have to do in the partnership, and you have to nurture those relationships with all the partners, I would say. Yeah, as I said, I think some of the mistakes that you might do as a smaller brand when you're starting up is to take those like short-term wins. But then as soon as you feel that the brand is not performing, you might get kicked out. So I think always establish a relationship with like a long-term perspective, and and also have those discussions like, where do you see us within the coming years? Now we're placed at this part of your department store or whatever. Where do you think we should be? And like, this is what we see ourselves, and make sure that you have the same vision going forward. I would say that's important.
Sean, I know you agree. Why don't you tell us your approach to this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the risk of just saying the same thing with different words, but CT is 95% one shareholder and 5% one other shareholder that's been with us from the beginning. And that ethos starts at the top and just oozes all the way through the business. Everything we've always done as a business has always taken the long-term view, partnerships over anything. And you do that by give and take, by having mutual respect for one another, being open, building that credibility with one another, and having that transparency. And we talked about, you don't want to do short-term wins, and very much take the long-term view, but you may need to take short-term pain to go for that long-term view. We've got a partner in Nigeria, and they've gone through loads right now. Their currency devalued by 70%, right, in the country. So immediately we had to do something. So we've had to work on their marketing, trading in country, what the supply chain, and we've had to work on terms. Now, you wouldn't do that if you were looking at taking a short-term view. If you're taking a long-term view, of course you would do those things. And that's why everything is a partnership. And actually, we're very hot on not calling our wholesale partners accounts. They are our partners. We are partnering with them. We want to grow their business. They want to help us grow ours. And it's together that you work and deliver that. And you touched on sort of discounting there, and I think that feeds into that transparency. Share the marketing plans, share on what we're wanting to do. What do you want to do? How can we build that in to be a positive message rather than sort of off the huff and sort of make it a negative one? So yeah, it's all about that transparency and working together and building that trust and sort of mutual respect, and that will always deliver the best outcome.
Yeah, I completely agree, Sean. I mean, for the wholesale channel to be successful, that kind of data sharing and collaboration has to be a continued focus area going forward. It's more important than ever right now, I'd say. And having some kind of platform that enables brands and retailers to share that data, like upcoming collections, stock levels, lead times, imagery and video options, is more important than ever right now to kind of help that transparency between both parties. And I think kind of technology and integration is going to become more key as well between brands and retailers to help support that transparency between both businesses. It's more of a need than a nice to have now. So integrations, with 360 view into the brand's inventory, obviously POS integrations as well. They're becoming more and more popular in the market, as well as ERP integrations are still as prevalent as ever to kind of drive operational efficiencies. So totally agree on those things. And I think a more customer-facing experience will also be key for brands. Obviously, as fresh buyers, young buyers are coming through, they're very used to shopping online. They're used to online websites, D2C, that kind of thing. So having a more user-friendly kind of B2C like proposition to shop for wholesale is more important than ever going forward.
Thanks, Tom. I wanted to circle back. Someone from the audience has asked a question where we touched on the point around excess inventory and excess stock, and obviously, the dream is to make the right amount that sells out, and then you don't have any waste, etc. Obviously, that's quite tricky, which is kind of the question from the audience. What do you guys have any advice when it comes to that kind of excess inventory question, and how to kind of get it right if there is an answer, the magical answer? Sean, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, excess inventory is always on our mind. We're incredibly conscious of our own impact on what's going on in the environment, and actually on our partners' impact as well. We're shipping to these people all around the world. How does that affect it and things? And we as a business try and focus on what we can do to do our bits. And actually, we've been working with Planet Mark to improve our impact on the environment as much as we can. Fortunately, we've been certified by them for the past 4 years running, which is great. But we do various different things on both sides of the coin. You know, the stuff that we do as a retailer and the stuff that we can help our wholesale partners do to try and reduce those levels of excess inventory. And actually on our side, you know, we're fortunate that we have, you know, a high mix of continuity stock. You know, white shirts never really go out of fashion, neither do navy blazers and neither do navy zip next Tom. And, you know, so we're very fortunate in that respect. So, you know, you don't have as much, but, you know, we work with our suppliers to have VMI on some of these products as well. So they're constantly reforecasting on what stock we need based on our trade. And, you know, if we do need to clear, we do it through responsible and sustainable routes. You know, we work with the British Heart Foundation, for example, to try and recycle those shirts and give them or not just shirts actually, to people that need it. But then on the other side with our partners, you know, we try and reduce risk through how they buy from us. You know, whilst we're monitoring their sell-throughs and making sure they are trading through and suggesting how they can trade harder to make sure they get their sell-throughs up. But we work on a completely pull model. We're not forcing people to take specific ranges. They know what, you know, they are the market experts. We are the brand experts. If they know what works for their market, we're not going to tell them no. So, you know, we work on a completely pull model so they can curate exactly what they need for their market. We will guide them on what our best sellers are, but maybe they don't translate. And, you know, then we work with their sales planning throughout the season and ahead of season to make sure that they have got the right levels. So, you know, again, it's all about transparency and working together.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we don't really work with that kind of must buys that some brands do with their collection, that they force some products on their partners. We don't do that either, and we do have we have restrictions on all of our products really. So we say that you can't buy too much of anything really, because we rather see that they sell out of it and buy it again next season. And I think this might differ a bit from you, Sean, how you work, because I think you have a lot of stock and you offer that possibility for your partners to buy like on immediate order, like on demand. We have shifted away from that, and we used to be a brand where we had like quite a bit of denim and shoes and some of those like core categories in stock, so we could offer them on immediate orders. We shifted away from that, so. We rather see now that they buy like one seasonal orders and they sell out of it. And if they're lucky, we might have some stock, but we rather see that they can do it again and over and over. And that's why we try to keep those to make sure that they buy in a more, how to say, like a broader selection rather than to go too deep in some certain categories or products.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a kind of the opposite end to excess stock and items not selling, I know in prep for this discussion, we discussed the viral success of the acne scarves, which have trended on TikTok and, you know, had numerous articles written about them in the fashion press. And that's kind of the other side of when something does so well and it sells out, how do you, which obviously we all want, how do you manage that? How do you carefully manage, I guess there's a balance of saying, okay, we've sold out this, let's flood the market, or, you know, let's pull back and be a bit more exclusive. And, you know, do you just keep bringing that product back season after season and hoping it keeps selling? Or do you say, right, we've had one success, let's get rid of it and start again? Could you give us a bit of insight into how you've managed that?
I mean, there's a few aspects of this that are interesting. I think we learned the hard way in some ways, where quite some years ago now, we had a great success with one specific model of a scarf in one region, and it got kind of saturated, and that product didn't really perform anymore. And we got maybe a bit too connected with one product, or like one specific model. So what we've done is we said that we put restrictions on everything, as I said, to make sure that all clients buy a wide selection of products, because that gives them time to sell and we can introduce new products. So in a way, we've gone from like a huge success on one product or like one scarf to have like a really good selection now that's really like performing well. And I think at the same time, I think as a brand, we've been killing darlings a bit too quickly as well, where we had success with products and we've been like, okay, we're quite like creativity driven. So we've been like, okay, that was great, let's move on to the next. But I think that we learned some lessons when it comes to that too, But it's a super tough balance. But I think one of the key things that we've done is set those restrictions, or whatever you might call it, that you make sure that you give products time to be introduced to a market. Because what we've done before is we said that if we saw that something didn't really perform one season, we didn't try it the next. But we also see that you need to have a product like coming back season after season, because it might take some time for it to mature on the market. So that's been one of the key strategies as well, to make sure that they can be introduced over a longer period of time, to have those successes stay for longer.
Thank you. Someone has actually just asked a somewhat related question from the audience, asking our thoughts on exclusivity and, you know, maybe giving one product to one partner, or, you know, if you're particularly in London, you know, there are a lot of multi-brand stores. Do you have, I can think of one brand, I know that when they launched with one wholesale partner in one city, and that was like the exclusive retailer. Just interested to know your thoughts, anyone's thoughts around that approach to exclusivity, and how do you strike the balance between being too exclusive, I guess? Anybody want to take that?
I think I can start, and I think, or what we've seen is that, you know, with online shopping, and, you know, the accessibility is crazy these days. Like anything you want, you can get it, essentially. So I think that's one way of like offering something unique to the end consumer, but also to a partner, and say that we have something really special that we want to share with you. And what we said also from our end is that we've used wholesale as a communication channel, and that has become really important too, where we let our partners speak to their consumers in their language, which we find really, really important. And one way of making them do so, or like having that trade-off, is giving them something exclusive to talk about. So that's really like been a profitable, or like a successful way for us to do it, sharing those like exclusive products or launches, or what it might be.
Yeah, I mean, we're a very different brand to Acne, so, you know, it's quite hard to put a bit of exclusivity on white shirts, navy jackets, etc. But what we do is, if we find the right partner within a region, we may offer exclusivity for an entire region, and they are the main supplier in that region, rather than sort of saying you are the multi-brand location in that city. So, you know, it's something that we have in our armory for the right partner at the right time in the right place.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think from a, you know, technology solution standpoint, you know, working with a number of brands, we're seeing more and more brands come to us asking for like what the potential is around customizations. So, hey, you know, we've got this, you know, core style, but we want to have some exclusive partners be able to customize it in a certain way that's purely for their market or purely for their city. So that's why we kind of developed the customization solution that will allow the buyers to customize certain products from the brand, which is then controlled from the, you know, the brand requirements based on certain, you know, features and triggers that get put into that. But it's definitely becoming more and more prominent in the market to see, you know, the odd style here or there, or the odd collection or capsule that can be customized by the buyer.
Thank you. Someone has asked if you could highlight one strategy, just one, that your business has focused on in terms of success in the wholesale space. I guess this is giving some advice to our audience as we are nearing the end. What is that one strategy that you think a brand should focus on? Sean, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, if I'm restricted to one, I think I would say, you know, do the right deal, not the highest margin deal. You know, there are multiple people out there in different areas. Someone may offering what looks like the golden path right here, right now, but is that the right one in 5 years' time? So yeah, absolutely focus on what is the right deal, what not necessarily is the right thing for the short term.
Yeah, and I think for our part, when we talked about this internally, I think it's positioning, I would say, and that's how we've been focusing on. As I mentioned before, if I had one advice to like a new brand, it's like define who you are, and then go for that. And then that's what you're going to tell all the partners that you go out and meet, and if you have prospects that you want to talk to, just make sure that you have a good idea of who you are and try to go for that. So positioning yourself where you want to be and then stick to that, because otherwise you might get lost, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the point I made at the start, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So as you grow, obviously as a new brand, you're probably going to look at one channel to begin with, but as you start to grow from there, then start to look at other routes to market. So obviously B2B is a key one and it's the one we work in, but also going direct to market, via your online website, potentially even looking at marketplaces to help grow your brand in different regions as well. So do look at, diversification to support the business growth, as you go forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We are almost at full time, so I think that is actually a great place to leave the conversation. Although I think we have had lots of questions from the audience, so I will share those with the panel and hopefully get in touch with anyone that has a question. So thank you all very much. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to NuOrder by Lightspeed for partnering with us today. And thank you to our audience for joining us. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.